Hey guys, tonight we saddle up under a sky the color of deep ink. There's a breeze off the plains, cool and dry, brushing your cheek like the edge of a silk sleeve. Your horse stamps once in the dust, shaking its mane. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf cries out. Not close, not far, just enough to remind you that you're very, very alone on the steppe. This is the start of a journey not everyone survives. You're a Mongol messenger in the age of the great Khans, and your job is to ride, fast, silent, and absolutely non-stop across thousands of miles of grassland, mountain, and desert. You don't get maps, you get instinct, and if you wait too long to change horses, well, let's just say your horse won't be the only one collapsing in the dirt. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere cozy, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love seeing where the Mongol Empire reaches these days. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start under the stars, because Mongol messengers often rode through the night. It was cooler, quieter, and frankly, less likely to get you shot by mistake. The horses breathed more easily. The predators, human and otherwise, lurked but didn't swarm. Out here, your ears become your compass. Every rustle could be a snake, or a storm, or just a goat chewing with attitude. You ride through it all, eyes narrowed to slits, hands gripping the reins wrapped in sheep's wool for warmth. The stars aren't just pretty, they're your map. You've been trained to know which constellations rise when, how far Altair hangs from the horizon near the equinox, and which way the Milky Way tilts by the season. It's less twinkle twinkle than turn left at the Pleiades. Historians still argue whether Mongol messengers used any kind of written night route logs or whether it was all memorized through oral training. Either way, you aren't carrying a scroll. You're carrying the orders of a Khan, maybe even from the great Khan himself. And if that message doesn't make it across the empire, whole cities could fall. The landscape changes under your hooves. Ridged soil in one stretch, flat sand in another, then a damp patch where a hidden stream waits to trap careless ankles. Mongol horses, those squat, shaggy, cranky little tanks, are built for this. They don't need grain. They'll graze on the fly, even nibbling frozen grass if they must. And your job is to know exactly when to push them harder or let them go. You feel for the change in pace. Mongol riders weren't just warriors. They were horse whisperers with saddle sores. The horse's breath tells you more than its stride. Short and hot, you've got another mile, maybe two. But long wheezing, that beast is done. You click your tongue once, then again. The sound bounces oddly in the dark, but your mount obeys. You don't gallop, it's too early. A trot conserves stamina. Your message won't get there faster if you kill the horse before dawn. A rabbit bolts ahead, and for a moment your horse flinches. You smell dust and fur and your own unwashed clothes, wool, sweat, and a hint of dried yak milk. You've been riding since dusk, and the next relay station, or yam, is still 10 miles off, give or take a goat. The moon lights the land silver. Mongol messengers trained to ride by moon shadow. If your horse's ears flick forward in a certain way, it might be sensing another rider ahead. If the ears flatten, well, that could be a wolf, or worse, a bandit. You tighten your grip. You think of the horses ahead, not your horses. Those are waiting at relay posts, fresh and restless, but you know them by heart. Some are fast but skittish, others slow but tireless. You know which one needs a pat on the neck to start, which responds better to a firm thigh nudge. One even likes to be sung to, though your voice could curdle fermented mare's milk. There's a rhythm to this ride, the clop thump of hooves, your breathing, the occasional flap of your coat in the wind. It becomes hypnotic. You stop thinking in words. It's all movement, memory, and the pull of the reins. You pass a bone marker at a fork in the trail, a bleached rib cage tied with black cord. It's not just scenery. That's your sign to veer left toward the foothills. Right would take you toward the salt flats, and you don't fancy dying crunchy tonight. A fox yips in the distance. Your horse flicks an ear, but doesn't slow. Smart beast. You shift your weight slightly forward, signaling a bit more speed. You've got a timeline, and if you don't make the next yam station by morning, someone's likely to ask unpleasant questions. In this job, being late is second only to being dead. You pause for water, not for you, but for your mount. A shallow stream crosses the trail, clear enough to show the stars wobbling on its surface. You dismount quickly, let the horse drink, and check its legs. Mud-caked, but no swelling. That means no break, no sprain. You breathe out. It's easy to forget, but Mongol riders carried small kits for binding hooves, splinting legs, even sewing gashes with sinew thread. You'll use them all before this trip's through. 1 hour before sunrise, and the horse begins to falter. Not badly, just a shift in rhythm, a heavier exhale, a tightening of the neck. You hum quietly, partly to calm the horse, partly to keep yourself awake. Mongol messengers often sang nonsense songs during long rides to stay alert. Some of them are still remembered today, though no one agrees what they meant. A few might have just been horse names sung on repeat. That's when you spot it, a dim flicker of torchlight between two low hills, the next yam. You'll get 10 minutes there, maybe 15 if the soup is ready. Swap horses, grab dried cheese and a skin of arog, and ride on. Because the Empire waits. You make it to the station just as the eastern sky begins to pale, a bruise-colored hint of dawn stretching out over the grasslands. The relay post is modest, just a low wooden structure with a sloping roof and thick walls packed with sod and dung for insulation. No sign out front, no cheerful innkeeper with a steaming towel, just a battered fence, a couple of half-sleeping herders, and the smell of manure and boiled meat. This is a yam station, one of hundreds, maybe thousands, across the vast Mongol Empire. You don't need a fancy nameplate. You know it by the smoke rising from the cooking fire, the horses tied under a thatched lean-to, and the unmistakable sound of snoring mixed with someone grinding millet in a bowl. The yam system began under Genghis Khan himself, a genius of logistics, if ever there was one. He realized early on that if you wanted an empire that spanned from Korea to Hungary, you couldn't just hope your messengers survived the trip. You needed structure. So he set up a relay system every 20 to 40 miles, complete with fresh horses, minimal shelter, and basic supplies, like the world's least relaxing road trip rest stops. You hand off your tired horse to a teenage boy with wind-chapped cheeks. He doesn't say anything. He just nods, takes the reins, and leads the animal away, like a mother retrieving a toddler after a tantrum. You stretch, crack your neck, and head toward the yurt next door, hoping for something warm and vaguely edible. Inside, the light is dim and orange. A woman stirs a pot that smells of onions, goat fat, and whatever root they dug up this week. You accept a wooden bowl without asking what's in it. The texture's somewhere between porridge and regret. But you eat fast, because the clock's ticking. The Empire doesn't do take your time. A fresh horse is saddled and waiting. You inspect it briefly. Short legs, broad chest, a suspicious side eye. Typical Mongol pony. Not fast in a sprint, but built to go all day on 2 tufts of grass and a dirty look. Its ears flick toward you, and you offer a quick pat on the flank. Now here's the thing. Mongol horses weren't just chosen for speed or stamina. Riders developed deep personal knowledge of their quirks, often swapping out mounts mid-gallop, using practiced moves that would make a rodeo cowboy blush. And the yam stations weren't just for rest. They were clockwork pieces in a continent-wide puzzle. Some of them were permanent and staffed, like this one. Others were little more than an agreed-upon tree stump with a stash of supplies buried nearby. Historians still argue whether every post was staffed with trained attendants, or if messengers were sometimes expected to fend entirely for themselves, saddling, feeding, even hunting en route. Evidence from Persian chroniclers and Yuan-era documents gives conflicting accounts. But one thing's certain, the system worked frighteningly well. Messages could travel from Karakorum to Baghdad in a matter of days. You grab a skin of arag, fermented mare's milk, tangy, slightly alcoholic, and deeply acquired in taste, and toss the last dregs of your bowl outside, where a lean dog immediately licks the earth like it's Thanksgiving dinner. Time to ride again. You don't say goodbye. No one does. You just swing on to the fresh mount, grip the reins, and nudge forward. The pony trots off without complaint, though it does shoot you one skeptical glance as if to say, "You again?" Out on the open plain, the morning light reveals more detail. The sweep of hills like frozen waves, patches of wildflowers already bending in the breeze, and dark birds wheeling overhead. Somewhere nearby, another rider is moving. You sense it more than see it. The yam routes aren't highways. They're loose paths stitched together by memory, instinct, and the occasional bone marker. You start to think about the enormity of the network. At its height, the Mongol yam system stretched over 25,000 miles. Some historians compare it to the Pony Express, but that's underselling it. This wasn't just a mail route, it was the nervous system of the largest contiguous land empire in human history. Messages, supplies, intelligence reports, tax records, even diplomatic gifts moved along these trails. But here's a lesser-known wrinkle. The yam stations weren't just for messengers. High-ranking officials, emissaries, and favored traders with the right credentials could use them too. And those credentials? A little medallion called a paisa, which you'll hear more about soon. Your path bends eastward, skirting a small river. The pony's ears twitch at the sound of water, but it keeps pace. You hear frogs, tiny brave creatures that don't seem to care a Mongol courier is thundering past. Your breath steams slightly in the morning chill. You adjust your coat, thankful for the extra layer of sheep's wool stitched into the collar. A soft memory surfaces. One time, you reached a yam station just as a snowstorm hit. The herders let you squeeze into the pen with the off-duty horses, and you slept upright between two warm flanks. It smelled like old hay and wet leather, and someone snored for 6 hours, but you lived. And now, as the sun climbs higher and the day begins to warm, you feel that same low gratitude. Not for comfort exactly, just for motion, for knowing the next station is out there, somewhere ahead. There's an art to pacing yourself. You alternate trots and canters, never pushing too hard unless you're close to the next changeover. Mongol riders called it feathering the wind, moving just fast enough to ride its edge, but not so fast it cuts you. You check the sun's angle, squinting through the light. You figure 4 hours to the next relay if the pony holds up and you don't hit rain, which, considering the sky has just developed a weird purple smudge on the western horizon, is not guaranteed. You press forward, because if you don't, the message doesn't get through. And when the message doesn't get through, let's just say, heads have rolled for less. The rain starts as a drizzle, just a few hesitant drops, as if the sky is checking whether you're paying attention. Then it gets bolder. Within minutes, you're drenched from the collar down, and your pony looks about as enthusiastic as a cat in a bathtub. Still, you ride on. Because today's not about weather, it's about timing. Specifically, how you know when to switch horses before the horse knows it too. You start to feel it in the rhythm of the hooves. Mongol messengers spent so much time in the saddle they could sense the subtle shift when a trot loses its bounce, when the gait stiffens just enough to spell trouble. You listen for a deeper grunt with each exhale. You watch the ears, the way the tail flicks. A horse in its prime might trot 20 miles like it's chasing butterflies. But as soon as it begins to sweat behind the ears or favor a back leg, you're losing momentum, and worse, risking injury. And you don't want to be the rider who injures the Khan's horse. They might not skin you alive, but they'll probably give you the look, and Mongol commanders are experts at the look. Like your childhood tutor crossed with a sandstorm. Historians still debate whether there was a formal distance limit for each horse, or if riders just relied on instinct. Some say 25 kilometers per horse. Others argue it varied wildly, depending on terrain, urgency, and the personality of the local station manager, who might have just had a fight with his brother-in-law and didn't feel like being helpful. Your current pony, bless its short, determined legs, is giving you mixed signals. It's still trotting, still alert, but there's a tightness creeping into the movement. The sweat isn't bad, yet, but you recognize the early signs. The next relay isn't for another 10 miles, and if you push too hard, this pony might start refusing commands. And once a horse hits that stubborn wall, no amount of A-log or sweet-talking will fix it. So what do? You lighten your load. Mongol riders often carried detachable gear, bundles of supplies, extra reins, a backup bow if things got spicy. You loosen your travel sack and shift your weight slightly forward in the saddle, taking strain off the animal's back legs. The pony notices, snorts once, and continues. Message received. Then their smell. Yes, really, Mongol riders used their noses, like a pit crew at a racetrack. A healthy working horse smells like warm fur and wet grass. But when something's wrong, you catch that sharp edge, like sour milk and burned hide. One whiff and you know it's time to pull over and switch mounts before you end up walking the rest of the empire. You whistle low and long. Your pony flicks its ears and lifts its head, surprised. That's another test. If it's alert enough to react, you've probably got a few more miles. If it doesn't even twitch, you're either boring or that horse is 2 steps from retirement. Remember, horses weren't just vehicles to the Mongols. They were comrades. You trusted them, lived off their milt, sometimes even their blood in emergencies. One quirky tidbit that always raises eyebrows, Mongol riders sometimes nicked a vein in their horse's neck, drew a bit of blood, and drank it, mixed with water during long rides. It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, but it worked. Iron, protein, hydration, and you didn't have to stop for lunch. Not that you'd want to. Lunch is a luxury. You chew on a chunk of dried curd, hard enough to chip a tooth, but tasty in a this'll keep me alive kind of way. The taste lands somewhere between chalk and regret, with a faint note of goat. You crest a low ridge and spot the next station, a squat stone shelter with a few horses tethered under a lean-to and smoke curling from a chimney. You grin, but only a little. You're still a good hour out and the pony's starting to drag. The last half mile is a judgment call. Push too hard and the horse might collapse. Ease up too early and your message loses time. You start a soft chant, not words, just syllables, and let your body move with the horse's rhythm. Mongol riders use chanting to soothe their mounts, and honestly, it helps you too. Something about the repetition clears your thoughts, resets the rhythm, keeps the panic from settling in. You remember what your mentor once said, "The best horse doesn't run fastest, it runs longest," which sounded wise at the time until you realized he was riding an absolute slug of a mare and just didn't want to swap. You check your pony's legs again, mud-caked, gait uneven, breathing shallow but steady. 1 more mile, maybe 2. Then a herder spots you from the station and waves. Relief. You don't gallop in like a hero. You slow to a gentle trot, dismount smoothly, and lead the pony in by hand. It's panting now, and when you run your hand along its flank, you feel the tremble in its muscles. It's done. You murmur a soft thanks in the old tongue, then hand it over to the local handler. The station master, a woman with sunburned cheeks and a sharp look, sizes you up. She points at a dapple gray mare and makes a questioning face. You nod. She knows what she's doing. They saddle it quickly. No conversation, no fuss. This isn't a social call. The fresh horse feels like silk after your last one. Smooth gait, eager eyes, mane braided with a red string, a good omen. You test the reins, shift your weight, and click your tongue. Time to ride again. Because knowing when to switch isn't just about instinct, it's about survival. And you've got a message to deliver. The moment you press your heels into the sides of the new horse, you can tell she's fresh. Not just rested, ready. Her ears point forward like arrows, nostrils wide, breath calm. She's got that proud little head toss some mares give when they know they're better than you, which she probably is. You settle into the rhythm quickly. The wind picks up behind you, sweeping the plains in long, whispering waves. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was pushing you along like a friendly ghost. The station already shrinks behind you, swallowed by grass and haze. Ahead, more miles, more hills, more silence. This leg will be about 40 kilometers. Your next changeover is one of the less formal posts, an unmanned station where the fresh horse is tied and waiting, if you find it. If someone else hasn't gotten there first. If a snow leopard hasn't decided it's the new house pet. You'll find out when you get there. For now, you move fast. Relay outposts like these vary wildly. Some are full service, with warm gares, roasted meat, and someone who might even crack a joke. Others are little more than a windbreak, a picket line, and a note scratched in the dirt with a hoof. But even the nameless ones were vital. They were spaced just enough to keep the momentum going. Too close, and you waste resources. Too far, and you risk collapsing in the middle of nowhere. Mongol planners, brilliant and terrifying, did their math like generals laying siege to the map itself. Historians still argue whether the spacing of these stations was calculated top-down by imperial decree or adjusted organically by local experience. Some archaeological digs show clear grid-like patterns. Others? Total chaos. A station next to a river one year might be up a ridge the next, depending on floods, wars, or just one stubborn goat that refused to leave. You ride past a scatter of rocks with weathered red paint on them, a marker. Mongol messengers read the landscape like a book, knowing which boulders were carved, which trees leaned just so, which hollow in the earth meant there might be water nearby. You file this one away in memory. Red boulder cluster equals halfway through the leg. Your mare nickers softly, sensing your slight shift in posture. You reach into your side pouch and pull out a tiny parcel wrapped in oiled felt. Inside, more curd, a few berries, and a sliver of dried mutton jerky that's harder than your saddle horn. Still, you chew it. It's not gourmet, but it's calories. Mongol riders often packed their food into tight bundles to save weight and space. And some even tied emergency snacks under their saddles, believing the warmth of the horse would cook the meat by the end of the day. Historians are deeply divided on whether this ever worked, or if it was just very warm, very questionable sushi. By mid-morning, the landscape opens up to endless undulation. Hills that look soft from a distance turn out to be steep, bony things with loose stones and thorny scrub. You ease the mare into a careful climb. She handles it without complaint, though you feel the faintest change in her step, one leg favoring slightly. Not a limp, but a difference. The Mongol system relied heavily on subtlety. Riders didn't just wait for a horse to break down. They planned ahead, studied the signs. It was a kind of living calculus. If this hill costs 10 minutes, but saves the horse from exhaustion, is it worth it? What if a snowstorm rolls in tonight? Do you switch early and slow down, or ride hard and risk injury? You make your decision based on scent and sound. The wind shifts, carrying the smell of wet moss, clay, and something sharper. Horse sweat, not yours. A herd nearby. Maybe the spare horse is tethered close. And then you hear it. The dull clunk of a wooden picket pole and the impatient scrape of hooves on dry soil. You crest the ridge, and there it is. A makeshift relay stop. One post, one bucket, one brown horse with a long face and an expression that screams, "You're late." This is the part most travelers would find strange. You don't stop and chat. You don't write anything down. You don't even pause long enough to enjoy the view. You just swap. You dismount smoothly, stretching your legs a little too far. Your knees crack like old wood. The mare you rode here snorts and leans into your hand for a moment. You check her hooves, brush the sweat from her back with a handful of dry grass, and loop her reins around the post. The next rider will take her back to the last station or onward, depending on the schedule. Mongol ponies, bless them, didn't seem to mind the round trips. You approach the new horse. Not ideal. His right eye's a little cloudy, his coat muddy, but he's alert, stomping and snorting like he's already halfway to your next destination. You tighten the saddle straps, mount up, and turn your gaze southeast. No break, no rest, just the sound of wind, the weight of your message, and the endless path ahead. Because this isn't a courier job. It's a relay of empires. You don't just carry words, you carry strategy, trust, sometimes the names of enemies, or the price of silk in Samarkand. You ride faster than storms. You ride with the knowledge that someone 1,000 miles away is counting on you to arrive before the rumors do. And you ride knowing that even a nameless station in the middle of nowhere can change the course of war, if you get there in time.
The new horse has spirit, and not always the friendly kind. You're barely 10 minutes out from the station when he tries a little sideways hop, a subtle warning that he doesn't trust your leadership yet. Fair. You've just met, and already you're bossing him around. But you hold steady in the saddle, keeping your heels light, your grip gentle, and your posture just firm enough to whisper, "I know what I'm doing." He relents, eventually. Or maybe he just likes the direction you're heading. Some horses were like that, oddly picky about routes. One favorite mount you rode last spring flat out refused to go west. Every time you turned him that way, he'd plant all 4 hooves and pretend he'd forgotten how to walk. You suspect he had a grudge against someone out that way. There's a reason the Empire allowed elite messengers to access multiple horses, not just a spare or two, but sometimes dozens over a long journey. Under Ogedei Khan, the system was scaled massively. Riders with imperial orders could requisition fresh mounts at every relay post, and higher-ranking ones could demand the best animals without so much as a please. Some records mention messengers with access to 50, even 100 horses over the course of a single assignment. Of course, you don't get 50 ponies just to feel important. You get them because when one stumbles, another has to be ready. When one gives up halfway through the desert, you're expected to press on. These horses were your lifeline, and, depending on your rank, a measure of your status too. Right now, your rank gives you enough authority to pick from the top-tier animals at most stations. Not the Khan's personal stock, obviously, but not the scratch-and-dent bin either. And more importantly, you carry a paisa, a metal tablet that says, in so many words, "Give this rider what they need, or else." But we'll get to that soon. First, you've got to make this horse your friend, or at least your reluctant coworker.
You start with breath. Yours. Mongol riders often used controlled breathing to calm themselves and their mounts, syncing their inhale-exhale rhythm with the horse's gait. You do the same. Deep in, soft out, letting the motion of the ride settle into your spine. It's oddly hypnotic, like floating on a quiet river. The terrain ahead flattens out into open steppe, dotted with wildflowers that buzz faintly with bees. Somewhere a marmot shrieks and dives into its burrow. The horse doesn't flinch this time. Progress. The sun climbs higher, casting shadows that stretch long and thin. You check the position not just for time, but for direction. Mongol messengers trained from childhood to use the angle of light, wind, even the patterns of migrating birds as navigation aids. You glance up. A hawk circles high above, riding thermals. That's a good sign. Hawks don't waste energy unless the weather is going to hold. Now here's the trick. With this much distance to cover, you don't want to switch horses only when one starts to falter. That's too late. You've got to plan switch points based on endurance curves. Think of each horse like a bowstring. You can pull tight, but not forever. Let it rest too soon and you waste potential. Wait too long and it snaps. There's no Fitbit on your wrist, no odometer on your saddle. You track it all by feel. And of course, by landmarks. You're approaching a low cluster of hills shaped vaguely like a sleeping camel. That's your signal. The next post is only an hour beyond, tucked into a shallow ravine beside a creek. A good place to water your mount, resupply, and maybe, if the wind is generous, take a short nap in the sun. Not that you plan to, but sometimes you close your eyes for a blink and wake up 15 minutes later with drool on your shoulder. Some relay stations had names, especially the big ones along the silk routes. Others were known only by rumor or nickname: the rock that hums, where the dog howls twice, broken tree but don't fix it. You remember them all, not for charm, but for survival. Because if you miss one, you could be riding 20 extra miles with a half-lame horse and no food, wondering whether the message in your saddlebag will still matter when or if you arrive. You pass a gnarled tree stump shaped like an old man's nose, another marker. A gentle nudge with your heels, and the horse picks up the pace slightly. He's warming up to you, finally. You take a moment to reward him with a soft click of the tongue and a short hum, half lullaby, half chant. Historians still argue about the training Mongol horses received. Some say they were practically wild and just used to being ridden hard. Others believe there was a sophisticated tradition of breaking, bonding, and even naming horses for their quirks. You tend to believe both. You've ridden ones that seemed half demon and others that understood tone of voice better than most people you know. You feel the shift before you see it. A sudden change in the air, a light breeze that carries the scent of water and ash. Smoke maybe. A cooking fire? You crest a rise and spot the ravine ahead. There's a tiny thread of silver that must be the creek and a low-slung yurt with smoke curling up from the chimney. The station, right where it should be. You can already taste the salty broth you hope is waiting, maybe even a boiled dumpling if the cook's in a generous mood. The horse senses it too. He perks up, ears alert, picking up his pace just a little. You ride the last stretch in near silence, savoring the rhythm. You'll swap again here. Another mount, another leg of the journey. And with each one, you're closer to delivering your message across grasslands, rivers, deserts, and dreams. The station master here is already waiting outside, squinting into the light like she's been expecting you since last autumn. She's older, with the kind of face that looks carved from leather, and the kind of arms that could wrestle a goat into submission before breakfast. She nods once, that's all. No hello, no nice weather we're not having, just acknowledgement. You're here. You're late. Or maybe right on time. You dismount, pat the horse's neck, and hand the reins to a boy who appears from nowhere, yawning and barefoot. The mare doesn't even protest, another sign she was ready for the switch. You flex your legs. The left knee makes a noise like snapping reeds. Your back wants to sit down and write poetry about firm bedding, but you ignore it. Then you pull it from your belt, the paisa, a small oval of engraved metal, heavy and cold even in the heat. It flashes dully in the sunlight as you hold it up. Not dramatically, just enough for the station master to see it. And she does. Her eyes narrow slightly, then she nods again and gestures to the side. Your next horse is already waiting. You didn't even have to ask. The paisa, sometimes spelled jereje, was your golden ticket across the empire, issued by the Khan himself, or someone who claimed to represent him. It told everyone along the route that you were authorized, official, and very much not to be messed with. Think of it like a cross between a royal badge, a letter of recommendation, and a "don't you dare charge me for this" card. Not every traveler had one. Traders and diplomats with the Khan's favor could be granted paisa medallions to speed their journey. But only the trusted messengers, the erayet, carried the higher tier ones. Yours isn't the top tier, but it's close. Polished silver with an inscription that loosely translates to, "He who delays this man delays the will of the Khan." Kind of poetic, kind of terrifying. You tuck the medallion away and head into the yurt. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of boiled mutton, fermented cabbage, and the faintest trace of burnt milk. You get a bowl of soup without asking, greasy, hot, comforting. Someone hands you a strip of sun-dried meat. You chew on it slowly, savoring the salt. There's no table, no chairs, just coarse wool rugs and 3 small children staring at you like you might grow wings and fly off mid-bite. You smile. They do not smile back. Tough crowd. Back outside, the horse is saddled and ready. This one's a sturdy-looking roan with clean hooves, sharp eyes, and a scar over one flank that looks suspiciously like a bite mark. You hope it was just a dog. Probably. Maybe. You check the saddle. Straps tight, nothing missing. You give the horse a sniff test, too. Mongol riders did this all the time. A fresh horse has a distinct scent, sweaty but not sour, dusty but not stale. If something smells off, it usually is. This one passes the test. You mount up, adjust your bag, and reach down to secure the message pouch under your tunic. Still sealed, still dry, still everything. As you ride out, the station master grunts something that might be encouragement or might be a recipe for turnip stew. Either way, you nod and kick into a light trot. The path ahead winds through gentle hills that blur into one another. You've been here before, or somewhere just like it. That's the trick of the Mongol steppe. It all looks the same until suddenly it doesn't. And if you've got the wrong horse or no paisa, it can go from familiar to fatal pretty quickly. The wind shifts again, and with it the temperature drops a few degrees. You pull your coat tighter. Somewhere behind you a hawk cries out. Ahead, the road dips into a narrow pass framed by 2 outcrops of black stone. You lean forward slightly and whisper something to the horse. Not words exactly, just syllables. Mongol riders often developed verbal cues unique to each horse or even to themselves. A particular whistle, a double tongue click. Some even had lullabies passed from father to son, sung only to horses during long night rides. Some people sang to calm the horses, some sang to calm themselves. You're not sure which camp you fall into, but either way, your throat hums with the low, steady tune your mentor taught you years ago. It doesn't have a name, it doesn't need one. You think back to your first paisa, brass, barely etched, crooked letters. It got you ignored more than it got you served. But it was a start. Now you carry silver, better horses, better soup, fewer cold stares. And once, just once, you saw a gold paisa, The rider was on a pale white horse, and the station master bowed. You've never forgotten that. Historians still puzzle over how many paisas existed, how they were distributed, whether fakes were common. Some say forges forged them on the side. Others believe each one was registered and recorded like a sacred relic. Truth is, the system worked mostly because people believed in it. The medallion only held power if others agreed it did, which for the Mongol Empire was often enough. You pass a few animal tracks, a line of wolf prints maybe, or a very confident goat. You steer slightly eastward, following the scent of dry grass and the promise of lower ground. Every time you flash the paisa, it buys you more than a horse. It buys you trust. It says, this rider carries more than a message. This rider carries momentum. And so you keep moving, wind at your back, the medallion against your chest like a second heartbeat. The Khan waits. And you will get there.
This horse is a smoother ride. You know it within the first 10 minutes. His trot is fluid, hooves hitting the earth with the soft, confident rhythm of a drum you don't realize you're following until your breath syncs with it. He's alert but calm, and when you tug slightly left at a fork in the trail, he responds without resistance. Rare is the horse that doesn't argue with you at least once. The trick now is thinking 3 horses ahead. You're not just watching this mount, you're watching the herd behavior of the entire region. Sounds dramatic, but that's how seasoned Mongol riders manage to keep their pace. Each region, each stretch of steppe, forest, or marsh came with its own grazing habits, its own rhythm of movement, and therefore its own fatigue profile. Some lands bred long-hull horses that could go all day. Others, especially near wetlands or rocky terrain, produced short burst mounts, fast but temperamental. You've been trained to read these signs. As you ride, you watch for hoof prints in the mud. Not your own, but those of other couriers. Are they deep and staggered, meaning someone pushed a tired horse too far? Are they light, tight in rhythm? That rider knew what they were doing. You see a patch of trampled grass where a herd recently passed. Mixed prints, some foals, some larger mares. From the spacing, you guess they're from the next station's pen. And from the number of droppings scattered nearby, yes, you're that in tune with nature now, you figure the handlers rotated the horses recently. That's good. Fresh stock. Also gross, but good. This is what it means to read the herd like a scroll. Mongol couriers weren't just riders, they were trackers, amateur veterinarians, weather readers, and logistical masterminds, all rolled into one wearing itchy wool trousers. You glance skyward. The clouds are holding, for now, but the winds shifted, drier, cooler, a sign that you're moving into higher ground. That means shorter grass, thinner grazing, and probably more skittish horses ahead. You start adjusting your plan accordingly. Your next switch might need to be sooner than you hoped. Now, just to keep you humble, you nearly ride into a rabbit hole. Your horse dodges it with a little hop, clearly offended that you let your mind wander. You grunt a half apology and give him a pat. No harm done. You crest a hill and pause briefly. The view is helpful, not just pretty. You scan for landmarks, a broken tree, a ring of dark stones, a distant shimmer that could be a stream or just a trick of the light. You're piecing together your relay logic like a living puzzle. Some writers carried route chants, strings of rhymed directions passed orally across generations. You know a few. Turn by the toothed tree, pass where the sky drips, rest where the goat grunts twice. Obscure? Yes. Effective? Surprisingly. And if you forget a line, well, you've got your instincts. Historians still debate how formalized this system was. Did riders receive detailed training in herd behavior, or did they just pick it up by experience, the same way you learn not to put your hand in a boiling soup pot twice? Likely both. What's clear is this:
The success of the YAM system didn't rest on strict rules, it rested on riders who thought ahead. You think now of the 3 mounts coming next. One at the base of the upcoming ridge, probably a lighter build for climbing. One stationed near a forest edge, might be jumpier, used to wolves. And one beyond the dried lake bed, tethered near a salt spring. That one will be tough, wiry, and not particularly affectionate. Perfect. You keep a mental tally of the horse's moods and readiness like a general counts battalions. You even give them nicknames: Ears Back, Twitchy Tail, and Old Reliable. You've never seen them, but the behavior of the region's herds tells you everything you need to know. Your current horse slows slightly, not a problem yet, but you loosen your belt, lighten the load on his back, and begin to hum, soft, low, rhythmic. It's not a tune anyone would want at a wedding, but Mongol horses respond to vibration. Your voice, your heartbeat, even your breathing, all of it matters. As you cross a shallow stream, the horse flicks his tail with irritation. He's sweating more than he should for this distance. You consider your options. You're 20 minutes from the next switch point if you push him, 40 if you take it easy. You choose the middle path, a slightly quicker pace, but not full canter. The grass here is brittle underfoot, making it easier to judge the terrain. The ground's dry, the trail clear. He can handle it. You notice the subtle tilt in his ears. They're starting to drift backward. Not quite annoyed, but not happy either. You murmur again, not to calm him, but to check his response. Still alert. Good. You think back to a time a fellow courier ignored the signs, pushed a gelding too hard through a rocky basin. The horse went down mid-run, leg shattered. The rider had to hobble to the nearest station on foot, carrying the message and half his dignity in a torn saddlebag. It added 3 days to the delivery. The Khan was not impressed. You learn from other people's limps. At last you spot it, a low stone enclosure shaded by a rocky outcrop. One horse tethered, stamping, another dozing nearby, and a faded strip of cloth tied to the fence post, a courier signal. This stop is ready. You slow your horse, dismount, and walk the last few paces. He's winded, but he held up. You kneel, run your hand along his flank, then whisper a quick thanks into his ear before turning to the next mount. The relay goes on. Another horse, another heartbeat. And somewhere far off, someone's waiting for word. You're not even in the saddle yet, and already this new horse is judging you. He's got that wide-eyed, sidewise glance thing going on, the look horses give when they've decided you're either new or about to do something foolish, which, fair, you probably are about to do something foolish, like ride him across a dry, wind-whipped plain with only a block of dried cheese and 2 sips of A-rag in your bag. He sidesteps as you tighten the girth strap. You give him a moment. Let him sniff the back of your hand, whisper something mildly flattering about his mane. He's unconvinced, but at least he stopped trying to back into the water trough. The saddle on this mount is one of the older, simpler types, leather stretched over a wooden frame with minimal padding. Mongol saddles weren't made for comfort. They were made to survive. High pommels, front and back, designed to keep you stable during sudden stops or even while firing arrows at full gallop. But all that stability comes with a price, namely your rear end. You swing into the saddle and instantly remember every bruise from the last 2 weeks. Mongol riders often developed thick calluses. Yes, there are records of saddle calluses on thighs and tailbones. You're not quite there yet, but give it another 100 kilometers and you'll probably evolve a second skin. You nudge the horse forward. He hesitates, snorts, then starts to move. His gait is choppier than the last horse's, more vertical bounce than forward glide, but he's fast. You can feel it in the way he carries his weight, light on his feet, quick to respond. A sprinter, not a marathoner. perfect for this next stretch. The wind has picked up again, and this time it brings dust. Not full-on sandstorm territory, but enough to sting your eyes and leave grit in your teeth. You pull up your scarf and duck your head slightly. Your eyes scan the horizon, flat, dry, and broken only by the occasional thorn bush and one deeply unimpressed crow perched on a half-dead tree. This section of the Yam route is notorious. Riders call it the lizard belt, not for any dramatic reason, just that it's home to about 9 billion sun-baked lizards that scatter underfoot as you ride. If your horse has a strong prey chase instinct, it can be a situation. Luckily, your mount seems more annoyed by the skittering reptiles than excited. He breaks into a canter, ears pinned forward, focused like a spear. You feel the vibration through the saddle. Your own breathing starts to fall in rhythm with the movement. Inhale 2 beats, exhale 2. Mongol riders use this trick not just for calm, but for endurance. Regulating breath kept your muscles from locking up and your mind from drifting too far. Sleepy couriers were a hazard. Some fell from their horses while dozing. Others developed wild sleep techniques, riding one-handed with reins tied to their wrists or slapping themselves every few minutes. You've tried both. For now, you just focus and nibble your dried cheese. Ah yes, cheese, specifically arul, a hard fermented curd that doubles as a snack and a projectile weapon. It's sour, bone-dry, and gets stuck in your molars like it's trying to colonize your mouth. But it keeps forever, and it gives you just enough energy to go from tired to mildly resentful, which is all you need. Mongol riders practically lived on this stuff. Combined with arag and maybe a strip of dried meat, you could cross the continent with nothing but a satchel and a strong stomach. You glance at the sky again. Still clear, but the wind's changing pitch, higher, more whistling than before. Not a storm, not yet, just a reminder that comfort is optional. Your legs ache. You shift in the saddle, lifting yourself slightly to ease the pressure on your thighs. The old trick. Weight on the stirrups, lean forward, breathe through it. It helps. A little. Historians still puzzle over how long Mongol couriers rode each day. Some say they covered 200 kilometers in a single stretch. Others suggest more conservative estimates, pointing out that terrain, weather, and horse rotation all played a part. But even the lower numbers are staggering. You've been riding since dawn, and your muscles feel like wet rope. Still, you keep going. Because that's what the system demands. Momentum is the engine of the empire, and you are that engine's moving part. You spot a distant shape on the horizon. Not a station, not yet, just a cairn. 3 rocks stacked deliberately, a traveler's sign. Maybe even left by another courier. You ride towards it. As you pass, you see something tied to one of the rocks. A strip of leather, dyed blue. A signal for a safe trail. A message passed without words. Mongol couriers use these subtle codes, often. Scratches on bark, bits of cloth, markings in the dust. Not for secrets, just navigation. Road notes, passed like whispers. And sometimes messages were passed by voice. Not written, not sealed, just memorized. A rider might deliver a note one day, then pass along an oral message the next. Codes, names, battle plans, even jokes from one commander to another. You've delivered a few yourself. You never forget the serious ones, and you always forget the jokes halfway through. It's a talent. By now your horse is starting to sweat harder. Foam forms at the neck and the head drops slightly. His speed is still good, but you recognize the signs. Another half hour, maybe 40 minutes. Then he'll need rest or release. You adjust your grip and begin to scan for landmarks. There's a dry ravine up ahead, and beyond that, a grove of wind-twisted trees. If you remember right, the next post is tucked in just beyond those trees. If someone is already there, you'll have to wait. If not,
you'll grab the next horse and ride. It all depends on the rhythm. The yam lives and dies by rhythm. Yours, the horses, the empire's. And right now, it's holding steady. The trees are closer now, thin and wiry things twisted by years of relentless wind. You guide your mount down into the shallow ravine with care. The footing here is tricky. Loose pebbles, brittle roots, and dry soil that shifts under each hoof. But your horse handles it like he's done it a dozen times. Maybe he has. You begin to hum again. Not a song exactly, just a pattern of sounds. Mongol riders weren't required to sing, of course, but many did. The vibration traveled through their bodies, through the saddle, down into the horse's spine. It soothed them both, kept the rhythm alive. More than once you've stayed awake during a midnight ride thanks to your own humming. It's not pretty, but it works. You emerge from the ravine onto flatter land. The trees, scraggly and low, give a bit of shade, and for a few quiet minutes you almost forget where you are. Almost. That's when you hear it. A soft rustling in the brush ahead. You halt. Listen. Nothing more. Could be a deer. Could be another courier. Could be something with sharper teeth and worse manners. You reach slowly for the small blade you keep tucked near your saddle horn. Not a weapon of war, just a utility knife, useful for cutting ropes, food, or, in emergencies, your own tangled stirrup leathers. Mongol messengers weren't armed to the teeth like the Empire's warriors, but they knew how to handle trouble when it came. You stay still for a long moment. Then, from the trees, a sound. A grunt, unmistakably equine. A horse. You relax slightly and guide your mount forward, and sure enough, there in the grove's clearing is another rider. A young man half asleep against a tree, his own mount grazing nearby. He startles when he sees you, rubs his face, then holds up a hand in greeting. You nod. That's all you need. He's a fellow messenger, probably heading the other direction. No need for small talk. You both know the deal. You point southeast, your intended path, and he points toward a narrow trail leading through a cleft in the hills. Then he leans down and scratches something into the dirt with a stick, a short line and a half circle. A trail sign. Good weather, dry ground, station ahead. You respond with a simple V shape. 2 hours behind me, one station, no trouble. Then you ride on. No further words exchanged. This system, gesture, sign, brief encounter, was common among Yam riders. Words took time, paper wore out, silence was faster. Even the messaging system itself sometimes used coded signals instead of full letters. Why write out "send reinforcements" when a piece of knotted string or a carved stick could say it faster and more discreetly? This was the balancing act. Speed versus silence. You had to move fast, yes, but not so fast that you raised suspicion, attracted attention, or blew past the information cues other riders left behind. And if you were riding through hostile territory, then silence wasn't just efficient, it was survival. Historians still argue whether Mongol messengers operated inside enemy zones. Some sources say no, only warriors and scouts crossed into enemy territory. Others insist certain elite couriers were trained to move unseen through areas full of spies and rebel sympathizers, especially during sensitive military campaigns. You've never been in that kind of danger, but you've heard the stories. Riders who traveled by night, using only starlight, who wrapped their horses' hooves in padded cloth to muffle the sound, who switched saddles mid-gallop in total darkness. You're not quite at that level, but you're getting close. You slow your horse as you approach a narrow pass. The rocks on either side close in, funneling wind through like the mouth of a bottle. The air howls, and you lean into it, pressing your body low over the horse's neck. The sound is deafening for a moment, nothing but wind and the echo of your own breath. Then, just as quickly, you're through. And there it is, a small, low-slung relay station at the base of a hill. Smoke curls from a fire pit outside. No yurt this time, just a rock shelter and a lean-to with 2 ponies tied in the shade. You dismount slowly.
Your legs wobble like soft cheese. Your knees don't quite bend right. Your mouth tastes like dust, and your nose is somehow both dry and runny. The joys of wind riding. A man steps out of the lean-to and eyes you. Then he sees the paisa. He nods and gestures to one of the tethered horses. It's your choice now. This is the part many riders struggle with, choosing the right horse, not just the newest. You step over, run a hand along the first pony's side, firm muscle, steady breath, but the ears flick nervously. The second one, slightly smaller, a bit older, but calm, focused. You can feel it. You choose the second. He lets you saddle him without complaint. You swap out your water skin, grab a pouch of cheese curd that looks like it was made during the previous dynasty, and accept a handful of pine nuts from the station master, a rare treat. Then you ride again. Because in the Mongol yam there are no long breaks, only short silences between gallops. And you're chasing silence now, not just speed.
You've barely cleared the station when your new horse takes off like he's got somewhere to be and a grudge about it. No coaxing required. He just lowers his head and digs in, hooves hitting the packed dirt with the precision of a seasoned veteran who's had enough of this waiting around nonsense. You hold on tight and lean into the momentum, letting the wind press against your shoulders as the landscape begins to blur. This is the fast leg of the route, the kind of stretch Mongol riders use to make up lost time or deliver truly urgent messages. Long, flat, open, and just enough elevation change to keep your legs sore and your eyes sharp. This is where the balance gets tricky. Ride too slow, and you risk delay. Ride too fast, and your horse burns out. But if you time it just right, if you know the terrain, understand the wind, and trust your mount, you can fly across the steppe like a letter shot from a bow. You steady your breathing again. Inhale, hold for 2 beats, exhale. Let your shoulders rise and fall in time with the horse's gallop. Mongol couriers called this threading the wind, the art of moving just fast enough to ride with it, not against it. You're not slicing through the wind, you're catching it, letting it carry you. Of course, if the wind shifts against you, well, it's more like getting slapped repeatedly in the face by an invisible ghost. For now, it holds steady. The soundscape changes. You notice it even before your brain registers what's different. The hoofbeats take on a slightly echoing tone, and the wind drops away for a moment. You realize you're running along the edge of a shallow valley, its low walls forming a natural corridor that amplifies every sound. This is where stealth matters. The Mongol yam system didn't always prioritize quiet, but in certain regions, especially near borderlands or rebellious provinces, silence became a tactical advantage. Riders knew how to disappear. They wrapped their stirrups and felt to dampen clinking. They avoided torchlight, relying on moonshine and instinct. They even altered their routes, taking lesser-known trails and watercourses to avoid detection. You pull your scarf tighter and lower your profile. Your horse senses the shift and responds, dropping to a more controlled canter. You both know this isn't the stretch to be loud and proud. Historians still debate how standardized these stealth techniques were. Some claim they were passed down formally, taught in small riding schools attached to major relay hubs. Others believe it was more intuitive, taught through mentorship and long nights spent listening rather than talking. You remember your own mentor, an old courier named Sogo, who could identify bird calls in the dark and once claimed to have outrun a snow leopard by changing horses 4 times in a single night. You're still not sure you believe that story, but he did have the scars. You think about him now as your current horse picks its way through a narrow bend in the trail, avoiding a patch of loose gravel. Smart animal. Confident but cautious. The kind of horse that won't spook at a shadow or freeze up in a storm. You feel safer on him than you do in most towns. The path veers again. Cutting through a scrubby thicket, you duck low to avoid a tangle of dry branches and nearly get smacked in the forehead by something resembling a very aggressive juniper. You spit out a leaf and mutter to yourself. The horse flicks an ear like he agrees. You emerge into a clearing, wide and flat, with patches of wild thyme and a few grazing deer at the far edge. They don't even look up. That's how quietly you're moving now. You ease the horse into a faster pace. The ground is good here, firm, dry, no hidden holes. You let him stretch his legs, and they do stretch. For a few golden minutes, you forget the message in your pouch, the aching saddle sores, the dried cheese stuck in your teeth. It's just wind, rhythm, and the endless Mongolian sky above. You pass a trail marker, a short totem made of bundled reeds and bone, painted with a faded blue stripe. It means, no bandits, go fast. You're grateful for that. The last time you saw a red-marked one, you spent the better part of a day hiding behind a ridge while a group of well-armed men inspected a caravan half a mile away. Speed it is. You nudge the horse into a full gallop now. His mane flies back. His breathing picks up, but he stays steady. You keep your center low, legs tight, arms relaxed. Mongol riders were trained to shoot arrows at this speed. You're just trying to stay upright and not lose your pouch of pine nuts. The clearing narrows. You spot another cairn, smaller, just a rock and a stick, but it tells you what you need to know. You're within 5 kilometers of the next station. That means it's time to slow down. You bring the horse back to a canter, then a trot. You listen to his breath, fast but not ragged. You check his ears, still forward, still focused. His chest rises and falls evenly. You've timed it well. You speak to him, not loudly, just a murmur. Almost there, friend, one more hill. He responds with a snort. Encouraging? Dismissive? Who knows? Horses are complicated. You crest a small rise, and there it is, a low cluster of gurs near a grove of old pine trees. Smoke curls from one chimney. A flag flutters lazily from a pole stuck in a stone ring. The symbol painted on it, white circle on red, tells you this station is safe, stocked, and ready. You dismount slowly. Your knees try to collapse, but you hold steady. Your thighs burn. Your back feels like a tent peg someone hammered in crooked. But you're here. You made it. A young man steps out of a gur holding a bridle. He sees your pesa, nods, then points toward a broad-shouldered gelding chewing thoughtfully on some grass. That's your next ride. No words exchanged, no questions asked. Just rhythm, wind, and the unstoppable hum of the yam. The gelding is tall, taller than most Mongol ponies, and a bit more skeptical than you'd prefer. He watches you with one eye while still chewing, like he's deciding whether you're trustworthy or just another tired courier with saddle breath and questionable decision-making skills. You approach slowly, give him the obligatory, "Hello, please don't kick me," pat on the neck, and begin to check the gear. The saddle is worn, but solid. The bridle is newer, leather still supple. The hooves look clean, though his right hind leg twitches, like he's remembering a bad dream. Still, he doesn't back away when you slide the reins over his head. Good enough. You mount up, knees protesting, and nod a thanks to the station attendant, an older man with a beard like tangled string and the expression of someone who's been awake for 40 years. He raises a hand in acknowledgement, then turns back toward the ger without a word. Mongol station hosts were famously efficient. You didn't come to make friends. You came for horses, soup, and possibly directions if the wind had erased a landmark. You guide your new horse back onto the trail, the station fading behind you as the trees thin out. This leg of the journey is quieter than the last. No ravines, no deer, no wind-carved gullies, just open ground and a sky that feels huge. It presses down gently, like a sleeping blanket, wide, soft, endless. The gelding walks at first, then shifts into a smooth trot without any cue. You're not sure if he's eager to go or just tired of standing still. Either way, you ride on. You start thinking about the unspoken language of Mongol messengers. Not just the signs and signals between stations, but the ones between rider and horse. A quick grunt, a low whistle, a twitch of your calf muscle. All these meant something. And then there's the stuff that doesn't look like communication, but absolutely is. You shift in the saddle, lightly adjusting your weight over the horse's shoulders. He responds instantly. No resistance, no delay. That's the sweet spot. That's when you know this relay will go smoothly. It's not all magic, of course. Sometimes things get weird. You once rode a horse that responded only to singing, off-key preferably, and only in a particular rhythm. Another one seemed to know the trail so well that any interference from you was met with passive resistance. You tried to nudge him left, he'd just stop. You insisted. He farted audibly and veered right. That one was named Batar. You still think about him. Mongol riders often carried whistles carved from bone or wood, simple things, tuned to specific pitches. Some historians argue they were used to signal between riders over long distances. Others suggest they were mainly for calming the horses. One scroll even hints that particular whistle patterns meant injured, need water, or enemy nearby. You reach into your bag and feel the smooth shape of your own whistle. You haven't used it in days, but it's comforting to know it's there, like a message you haven't sent yet. The landscape begins to shift again. Low dunes rising in gentle waves, like the land itself is breathing under the weight of centuries. The ground turns sandy, and the horse's stride shortens slightly. You respond by adjusting your posture again, standing slightly in the stirrups to take the weight off his back. This part of the journey requires more than speed. It requires awareness. Because the signs here are subtler. You listen closely, the way the hoofbeats sound on soft sand, the way the wind snakes through dry brush. You watch the way the horse's ears flick, not at random, but toward things you don't yet see. A snake, maybe, or just a shift in scent on the wind. That's the thing with Mongol riding. It's less about control, more about harmony. You're not directing the horse, you're cooperating. Like dancing, except the floor is full of rabbit holes and your dance partner could launch you face first into a thorn bush any moment. And still somehow, it works. You start noticing your own signals now, the way you hum under your breath when you're thinking, the way your right shoulder always shifts back slightly when you're recalculating your route. These patterns, unconscious but consistent, are part of the job. You cross a stretch of white earth, chalky, brittle, crusted with salt, a dried lake bed. The hooves crunch against the surface like old bones. The horse slows naturally, sensing the slickness just beneath the crust. You don't urge him faster. You trust him. He's earned it. Historians still debate how much formal instruction Mongol messengers received on equine behavior. Some records suggest detailed training at imperial outposts. Others imply it was all learned on the job, passed rider to rider, station to station. Either way, by the time a courier was trusted with a long-distance message, they knew how to listen to their horse better than they listened to people. You spot something odd ahead, a small mound of stones with a feather stuck in the top. Not a standard marker, but not random either. Someone left a message here. Could mean avoid the left trail, could mean wind trouble ahead. You steer right just in case. The sky begins to shift now. Afternoon, shadows stretching east. You have 2 or 3 hours of daylight left, enough to reach the next relay. Your horse huffs softly, not struggling yet,
but starting to slow. You shift again, relieve pressure, ease back on speed. It's all about preserving the rhythm, reading the breath, feeling the moment just before fatigue becomes danger. You murmur to the horse. You don't know what you're saying. It doesn't matter. What matters is the tone, steady, low, gentle. The language between you is older than writing. And just like that, the gelding straightens, picks up his stride again. No resistance, just trust. You ride on. And the yam continues, one breath, one hoofbeat, one signal at a time. It begins with a sniff, a little twitch of your nose, like you just passed someone cooking turnips in a campfire made of old boots. Then comes the sharp wind, the kind that makes your ears ache and your eyes water before you even know why. You know what this means. Weather. Not the friendly kind. The guess we'll find out if my coat is actually waterproof kind. The clouds roll in fast over the hills ahead, like a gray tide swallowing the horizon. Flat-bottomed and heavy, they carry that strange, metallic smell that only ever means one thing on the steppe. Something's coming. Snow? Dust? Hail the size of chickpeas? You've seen all three before, sometimes in the same hour. Your horse senses it too. He starts to shift beneath you, ears back, tail flicking in irritation. He doesn't panic. He's better trained than that. But he's clearly not thrilled about what's unfolding above your heads. You take a moment to reassess. This next leg won't be about speed. It'll be about endurance, footing, and pure luck. The kind of ride where you rely more on instinct than planning. The kind Mongol riders dreaded, but also took secret pride in surviving. You check your satchel. Water? Half full. Dried curd. Enough to keep you grumpy and alive. Paisa? Still tucked under your sash. Extra scarf? Yes. Spare gloves? 1.5. You hope you don't need both. Then the wind hits in earnest. Cold, fierce, and full of tiny, sharp bits of airborne regret. You press low over the horse's neck and urge him forward. He hesitates, just a heartbeat, but then responds. You both know there's no stopping now. The Mongols had tricks for riding in this kind of weather. One of the most useful, wrapping the reins around your wrists and steering by leg pressure alone. That way, when your fingers go numb, which they will, you're not left guiding 900 pounds of cranky horsepower with the grace of an undercooked noodle. You tighten your knees slightly, give a soft click, and angle him toward the low ridge ahead. You want elevation. Not too high, just enough to avoid flooding if the sky decides to dump more than wind on your head. And yes, it has happened before. You once crossed a dry basin in the morning and found it a knee-deep swamp by sunset, complete with frogs that croaked like disapproving elders. Your horse that day, a tiny mare named Mergen, refused to move until you promised not to make her swim. She won. You still detoured 6 miles. Today's horse is braver, but no fool. He picks his way carefully across the slope, keeping to firmer ground, avoiding the loose shale patches that are just waiting to twist an ankle. You guide him with pressure, not command. Mongol riders didn't control their mounts in storm conditions. They collaborated. There's a science to it. Shift left, the horse turns. Press both heels, he speeds up. Loosen your grip and lean back slightly, he'll slow. The body becomes a second language, unspoken but clear. Historians still debate how well Mongol horses were trained for weather extremes. Some say they were nearly wild, used to storms and cold from birth. Others point to specific herding methods and breeding lines designed for endurance in harsh climates. What's agreed upon? These little beasts were tough. Short, shaggy, wide-hooved, and so stubborn they'd probably outlast the empire itself. The temperature drops. Fast. You wrap your scarf higher, cover your mouth, and focus on breathing slowly. The trick in the cold isn't to rush, it's to flow. Maintain your rhythm. Let the horse find his pace.
Every step he takes is a negotiation between terrain, fatigue, and instinct. Snow starts to fall, not hard, not yet, but sharp little pellets that sting against your cheeks. You blink rapidly, then lower your head. Visibility shrinks. You ride with the map in your memory now. You know that somewhere ahead there's a cluster of rocks shaped like a sleeping sheep. Just past it, a narrow defile leads to the next station. You hope you don't miss it. The wind howls louder, funneled through the rocks like a flute being played by a furious god. You feel the horse tense under you. You press your legs gently, reassure him. He keeps going. You hum again. It's a low tune, same as always, but now it's part lullaby, part mantra. You've sung it in sandstorms, snow, and once during a hailstorm that made you seriously question your life choices. It's not magical, but it keeps the fear from growing roots. You pass the sheep-shaped stones, barely visible in the white blur, but they're there. You angle left into the defile. The wind stops, not completely, but it drops suddenly, blocked by the walls of the narrow cut. It's like stepping into a tent after a gale. Still loud, still cold, but bearable. The horse snorts, shakes his head. You pat him. Almost there, boy. Almost. The path here is steep and uneven. You lean forward, give him his head, let him pick his own footing. This is his world now. You're just the slightly shivering passenger with saddle sores and stubborn optimism. You round a corner, and there, a flicker of movement, a small rock shelter, barely visible through the swirling snow, a fire inside, glowing red like a dragon's eye. Someone's there. The station is still active. You guide the horse toward it, your own body aching with cold, your nose numb, your fingers uncooperative. You dismount with less grace than you'd prefer. A man steps from the shelter, blinking at the snow, then waves you in without a word. He sees your paisa. That's enough. Inside, warmth, soup, and a new horse, one that's dry, fed, and slightly less judgmental. Outside, the storm continues, relentless. But inside, for just a moment, the rhythm of the yam pauses, just long enough to catch your breath. Then, as always, you'll ride again. Because, whether or not, the message must move. You leave the storm behind, like a bad dream, still clinging to your coat. The air is clearer now, colder, yes, but calm. No more snow slicing at your cheeks, just the kind of winter chill that numbs your fingertips, fogs your breath, and makes the world feel wrapped in glass. Your new horse, a pale dun with a long, wolfish face and the patience of a saint, trots forward without complaint. He's dry, well-fed, and clearly unimpressed with the storm you just rode through. You suspect he'd scoff at thunder if he could. You move slower now, not because of fatigue, but because of caution. This stretch of land isn't known for wind or snow or even bandits. It's known for accidents. Flat on the surface, but riddled with hazards beneath. Dried riverbeds, hidden sinkholes, and patches of frost-cracked soil that look solid until they give way under your horse's hooves. You ride carefully. This is the part of the journey where a single misstep can cost you not just time, but the whole mission. The horse seems to know the terrain. He avoids the brittle-looking patches without prompting, picks his way around the icy dips, and sticks to the faint trail like it's drawn in ink only he can read. You relax a little. Then, 30 minutes in, just as you start imagining a warm fire and a full bowl of dumplings at the next station, it happens. A lurch, a stumble, a grunt of protest from your mount. Then, the worst sound. Silence. You're on the ground before your brain catches up. You land hard, jarring your shoulder and knocking the air from your lungs. Your vision goes black at the edges. You blink. Snow, sky, horse. You sit up slowly, everything ringing like a cracked bell. The horse is standing, thank the eternal blue sky, but he's favoring his front left leg, holding it at a strange angle.
He's breathing hard, more from pain than exhaustion. You scrambled to him, kneel, inspect the leg. Not broken, at least not obviously, but swollen, tender. This mount is done. You murmur to him, stroke his neck, let him know he did well. His breath puffs out in rhythmic clouds, warm against the cold air. Now comes the hard part. No backup horse, no relay station in sight, and the trail, miles long in both directions. You're too far from the last post to double back, and the next one, assuming the weather didn't knock it out, is at least an hour ahead. If you walk. And so you do. You strip off the saddle, hoist your pack, and, apologizing as you do, tie the reins loosely around a low branch. The horse will rest here. You've seen this before. Wounded mounts left with markings so other riders or herders can find and recover them. You place a stone beside the branch, a sign that a courier had to continue on foot. And then you walk. It's slower, harder. Each step sinks slightly into the snow-dusted ground. Your boots were not made for this. Mongol riders weren't expected to walk entire legs of the route, but they knew how to survive if it happened. You ration your breath. You bite into a shard of curd, let it melt slowly in your cheek. You listen. That's the worst part, the listening. Because now there's no hoofbeat rhythm to mask your thoughts. Just the sound of your own boots, your breath, the wind, and your heartbeat thumping like a war drum in your ears. You start scanning for life, birds, herders, other riders, but the land is still, frozen in that peculiar way the steppe does best, alive, but hiding. You think back to stories you've heard of couriers who finished their routes on borrowed oxen, who rode reindeer in Siberia, who once flagged down a goat cart in desperation, anything to keep moving. The Yam did not allow for excuses. There were even guidelines for what to do when stranded, some written, many not. You know the drill. Leave signs for following riders, keep the message warm and dry, preserve your food and energy, and never stop moving unless your life depends on it. You climb a small ridge. At the top, panting, legs aching, you scan the horizon. And there, finally, smoke. A thin thread rising into the clear sky. A station or a camp. Either way, a chance. You limp toward it, urgency returning to your limbs like fire. The final half-kilometer takes forever. You stumble once, curse softly, then laugh. The absurdity hits you. The mighty Mongol relay system, the most efficient postal network in history, and here you are, delivering your message on two very sore feet. But that's the thing about the Yam. It's not about perfection. It's about continuity. The message moves, no matter what. You reach the source of the smoke, a half-collapsed yurt, patched and crooked, but clearly alive. A boy emerges, wide-eyed, chewing on a root vegetable. You flash your paisa, not with flourish, just urgency. He bolts inside. Moments later, a man appears, older, sharp-eyed, silent. He looks at your boots, your shoulders, your wind-burned face, and understands everything without asking a word. He points to a roan mare, already saddled, waiting. You nod your thanks. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. You mount up. The horse responds immediately, ready, willing. You ride again. Because a broken leg is not the end of the journey, not for the horse, not for you, not for the message. You're back in the saddle, and it feels like returning to yourself after a long, weird dream where your legs did all the work and your feet staged a protest with every step. The roan mare beneath you moves smoothly, short strides, deliberate, strong. Her coat is thick and warm against the chill, and her ears flick back occasionally, checking on you like a quiet friend. You don't know her name, but you trust her. She starts with a slow trot, easing into the pace like she's testing the ground with every step. Smart girl. You let her lead for the first few minutes, using the time to reorient. Your shoulders ache from carrying your gear on foot. Your thighs are screaming again. You're hungry in a deep, hollow way. But for now, the message tucked beneath your coat is what matters most. The sun is dipping now, casting everything in gold and violet. The steppe looks almost peaceful, if you squint and ignore the fact that you're possibly being followed. Yes, that's new. You first noticed it maybe 10 minutes ago. The way the birds scattered behind you, the slight shift in the rhythm of the air. Then the second sign, hoof prints, not yours, not your horse's, fresh, deep, close. You don't panic. Panic is for green riders with light packs and clean boots. Instead, you fall into the pattern Mongol couriers were trained for: scan, analyze, ride smart. You take the higher path, not the most direct route to the next station, but one that offers a better view of the terrain behind you. You glance back over your shoulder as casually as you can. There, a rider, distant, no flag, no paisa showing, no attempt to close the gap. That's the worst kind of rider, the patient one. You're not carrying anything state-shattering, just a logistics report and a coded map with supply routes. But in the wrong hands, valuable. And couriers have been intercepted for less. Mongol couriers weren't spies, but they knew how to act like them when necessary. Messages could be encoded using symbols, knots and string, or even burned partially to prevent complete reading. If things got dangerous enough, well, you've been trained in that too. You know how to swallow a parchment if you must. It's not pleasant. It involves water, prayer, and a really flexible esophagus. Hopefully it won't come to that. For now, you speed up. You guide the mare into a loping gait, faster than a trot, slower than a gallop. You want to conserve her strength. This will be a long stretch if the station is further than you remember. You angle toward a dry gully, a shortcut, but risky. Bandits love bottlenecks, but it'll put miles between you and the follower. The mare hesitates at the edge, sniffing the dirt. You nudge her gently. She steps in. The wind follows you into the gully, rushing past your ears like whispered warnings. You think about the way Mongol couriers handled high-risk routes. They carried decoy scrolls, split messages into parts, half written, half memorized. You once rode a route where each station master gave you only a portion of the final destination. Names, codes, even a change of dialect. They didn't just deliver information, they protected it. Historians still debate how standardized these methods were. Some say there was a full code system, complete with training manuals and silent signals. Others believe it was more improvisation, handed down rider to rider like old campfire stories. You're inclined to believe the truth lies in the middle. You exit the gully and urge the mare uphill. She's still strong, though her breathing is heavier now. The shadows are growing. You keep glancing back, but the rider's gone. Gone. That's worse. You slow to a cautious trot and veer east, aiming for a ridge with better visibility. The wind changes again, carrying the scent of cooked meat. That's either another camp or your destination. You crest the ridge, and there it is. A relay station. Just a small one, a stone hut with a curved roof, a pair of tethered horses, and a ring of stones marking the fire pit. There's movement. Someone tending a flame, someone else adjusting a saddle. Relief washes over you like warm broth. You guide the mare in, heart thudding in your ears. As you approach, the attendants glance up. You flash your paisa quickly, not just for identity, but as a signal. Urgent, possible trouble, no time to chat. They get the message. You dismount, legs stiff again. You don't bother unsaddling this time. One of the station hands will take care of the mare. You just slap her gently on the neck and murmur, "Good job."
She snorts and turns to the trough. Then the question, ride on or wait? If the rider behind you is hostile, staying here puts others at risk. If you leave now, you're riding into the dark with no certainty. You choose the dark. They hand you a fresh mount, a small bay with a clipped mane and a gleam in his eye that says, "Let's go." No saddle this time, just a blanket and a rope harness, light and fast. Perfect. You swing on, adjust your coat, and hold the message tight against your chest. You nod to the station master, an old man with more wrinkles than coat buttons, and he nods back, once. You ride. No looking back, no second guessing. Because sometimes couriers carry more than information. Sometimes they carry trust. And right now, the Empire is trusting you. Night falls fast on the steppe. No streetlights, no neon signs. Just you, the horse, and the sky. A dome of inky blue pricked with stars, each one blinking like it's watching you. You ride by starlight, and starlight alone. The moon hasn't risen yet, but the constellations are your old friends. There's Altair, bright and steady. There's the curve of the Great Bear. You shift your direction slightly, correcting by the tilt of Orion's belt. Mongol riders didn't need compasses. They had the sky, the wind, and horses with memories better than most cartographers. The horse beneath you is nimble, quick, and maybe a little too eager. He wants to run. You can feel it in the way his shoulders tighten, the way his feet dance over the uneven ground. But you hold him steady. Now's not the time to race. Now's the time to vanish. Every hoofbeat is a whisper. Every exhale is a thread of fog in the cold air. The world has gone quiet in that strange way it does at night, when everything feels older and heavier. You can hear your heartbeat. You can hear the leather creak on your saddle blanket. You can even hear your thoughts. You wonder how many other riders are out tonight. How many hooves are crossing snowfields and salt flats, rivers and deserts. How many of them are humming their own quiet songs, carrying their own vital messages. You are alone, but not alone. The Yam is always in motion. It connects all of you, one endless thread, stitched through mountains, across borders, through centuries. The cold creeps in slowly, like water soaking through a wool shirt. Your fingers are stiff. You flex them one at a time, then tuck your hands under your arms for a moment, letting your legs and knees do the steering. Mongol riders often rode hands-free, especially in battle or deep cold. Your body learns the motions. You shift your hips, lean forward just slightly, and your horse responds without protest. The trail flattens ahead. You spot a dark silhouette in the distance, low roof, small fenced corral, the next station. You feel a strange mix of things. Relief mostly, but something else too, a kind of melancholy. Because this is the final relay. You're almost done. Your message, carried across hills and rivers and snow and exhaustion, will be delivered. The weight of it, tucked against your ribs, has grown familiar. You've memorized every bump in the leather pouch. You know the scent of the wax seal. You could recite the route in your sleep. But once it's handed off, that's it. Your part ends. You reach the station. There's no fire here, only a figure crouched in the dark, tending to something at ground level. As you approach, he stands slowly and tilts his head. No words, just a nod. You dismount. Your legs barely hold you. Your knees are jelly. Your spine is a question mark. But your hands are steady as you reach for the pouch. You don't need to say what it is. The man takes it, tucks it under his coat, and nods again.
this time slower, deeper, almost a bow. You hand over the rope reins. The horse lets out a breath, relieved. His job is done too. You turn back toward the night, your eyes adjusting again. You don't even know the name of this station. Most of them don't have names, but it's here. It existed when you needed it. And for the Mongol Yam, that's enough. Historians still argue about the exact mechanics of the system. How many horses, how many riders, whether the network truly reached every corner of the empire. But you know the truth. You lived it. You were it. And as you walk into the dark, breath steaming, thighs aching, chest finally light, you whisper a little thanks to your horses, to your boots, to the wind, to the stations and the station masters, to the goats who didn't block your path. You made it. The message got through. The empire holds. Now you feel your heartbeat begin to slow. The night is still. The stars overhead are steady, gentle. There's a whisper of breeze through the grass, barely enough to rustle your coat. You sit down finally at the edge of the low station wall. The cold is no longer biting. It's just part of the air, a presence, like the silence, like the peace. You stretch out your legs, sigh. Somewhere nearby, a horse shifts, hooves clicking softly against stone, a quiet reminder that the Yam never truly stops. Even now, another rider is saddling up, another message is being tucked into another coat, another pair of eyes watches the sky and the trail ahead. But for you, for tonight, you can rest. You let your head lean back against the stone, the stars bright above you. The muscles in your legs soften, your shoulders loosen. You feel the ache in your spine start to ebb. The story has settled. The ride is over. And even though the world remains wide, unpredictable, and full of wind, in this moment, everything is exactly where it should be. Close your eyes. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the hoofbeats fade. Sleep, messenger. You've done well.